I'm here today to talk about this wonderful mantua that dates to about 1756. A mantua is the name for a gown that was worn in court. The name Mantua originates from the place in Italy. It started off as a style of dress worn in the late 1600s. By the time that this gown was made, it had reached its peak. It's 210 centimetres in width, so that you could show off how much of this beautiful fabric that you could afford. And also, the wider you are, the more likely it would be that you were seen. To wear a dress this wide, you need really good underwear. The first and most important piece is your stays. Stays weren't about making you tiny, they were actually about making you tidy. The next piece of underwear that you'd wear, supported by the stays, was actually your hoops. And this gives something for this wonderful fabric to hang on. Fashion was everything when going to court. People who got in were the people who looked the part. And in the 1750s, to look the part, you needed a dress like this. The average court gown would have cost about the same salary as the master cook at Kew Palace was making in a year. The thing that makes this dress so expensive, it's actually the fabric itself. And because it's so wide, there's actually an awful lot of fabric. It was woven in Spitalfields in London, and this was the centre of silk production in England. The floral pattern was made using a technique called brocading, and this is where there are extra threads used to make extra patterns onto the fabric. It would have taken the weaver a day to weave just a matter of inches of the fabric. We think that the dress was worn by a lady called Mary Flaxman, and she was from a wealthy Norfolk family. This dress would have been really difficult for Mary to wear. When she got to court, it would have been really crowded, but actually getting there would have been the hardest of all. There's this wonderful description from the 1790s where they describe women having to sit on the bottom of their carriages and having to fold up their hoops above their heads. Your whalebone hoop actually meant that there was a lot more movement than is suggested here. Whalebone is really flexible. So when a woman walked, if she needed to go through a door, she'd actually need to just do a bit more of a clever kind of swish and gather to get through a doorway. Going to court was a really expensive business. Not only did you have your expensive court gown, but you had expensive lace and diamonds for your shoes and for your hair. This sort of fabric would only be fashionable for one season. So every year you would be expected to get a new gown. However, you could really show your politics through your dress. You could put a huge snub towards the king by wearing last season's gown. By the 1790s, this sort of dress had really gone out of fashion. However, Queen Charlotte insisted that these wide court gowns continued to be worn to court. This was in order to support the Spitalfields silk industry, which was under great competition from the wearing of cotton, which at this date was either being imported from India or being made in places like Manchester. George IV changed this, and I'm sure the ladies who went to court were relieved, but actually this marked the beginning of the end of the Spitalfields silk industry. There are actually very few places in the world which hand weave silk, like the silk that you see on this mantua. It's a really rare and dying art. There are only about 12 of these wide mantuas in this country, and there are probably less than 40 in the whole wide world. This dress is so special because it's not been cut up, it's not been altered. This is a really rare thing because what happened was, because the silk is so special, the textiles were reused, but particularly when you get to the 1870s, there was a real fashion for dressing up in fashions of the early 1700s. So many of these dresses were altered. However, this dress is perfect. So we're really lucky to have it as part of the Royal Ceremonial Dress Collection.